At this point, our cat has been dry for, it's been about 3 weeks since we've put this cat together, so it's pretty well completely dry now. A couple things I want to note: when I got it, it was already tan, and it was tan. It was a dry tan, so it was tumbled. This side was missing a few more whiskers than this side, so I did take a couple from here over here just to even them out. Most of the time when I'm doing a bobcat, I'll pluck these when I'm skinning them, put them in a bag, and when it's dry I put them back on. It just gives me a little more control of where they shape, and I don't have to worry about losing them in the tanning process. And then on these ears, I did end up lifting these up a little bit higher and bringing them in a little bit. And I've just filled the bottom in with clay. When I had them set the way they were set before, they just looked like they were sitting down too far. So I ended up pulling them up a little higher. I think it gave it a little better look. But we're now pretty much ready for the finish work. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put a little bit of epoxy here on the inside of these eyes, just in between the glass of this eye and the skin here. We'll just fill that little bit of that void in. Now these are the reflective eyes that you can get, so we want to make sure we're using a wood tool so we don't scratch these eyes here. We're just going to roll a little bead of epoxy here. We're just going to kind of squeeze it out here, and then we're going to work it in with our toothpick. At this point, if you had a spot in your nose you needed to fix with epoxy or along your lips, that would be the time to put a little bit of epoxy in to fill that. But I think we're pretty good on this one. I'm just going to take a brush here. I'm going to clean any of this epoxy off the eye. You just don't want to get that film on those eyes, because then it's a little harder to get off once it is dried and set up. Next step we'd be we're going to put a little bit of liquid latex on this eye. It'll just protect us when we get the paint on here, and it'll just allow us to remove the layer of latex here. End up pretty much coming off as one nice and even layer. We'll let this set up for just a couple minutes, and then we'll be ready to paint. You can let your epoxy dry hard if you wanted to, but you can paint over it as long as you're not pressing too much into it. It's not going to hurt the epoxy. So we're going to go ahead and let this latex set up a couple minutes, and then we're going to go ahead and start working some of the colors into this face. At this point, the latex we put on here, it is pretty well dry, especially on the edges. The middle still has a couple high spots, but we're painting the edges, so we'll be alright on that. Now on this one, I'm going to be using PanPastels. So the first color of the PanPastels that I'm going to be using is the red iron oxide tint. I'm just going to kind of go over any of the fleshy areas. I'm going to cover that epoxy work that we did in it. That'll give us just a nice base color that we're looking for. I'm going to go over the nose with this. Hit the inside of the nose, and we want to go a little bit along this lip line. Okay. And then we want to put a little bit the color of this ear skin. So we're going to Get some of the fleshy undertones in the ear here. You don't want to forget that little wing flap that they have in their ear. Get a little bit of the color into there also. Try not to get too much into the hair. If we do, we just kind of want to work it out before we seal it into her. Just take a rag or a paper towel or something, and that'll get most of it out of the hair. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to use matte clear just to seal it off here. My next color, I'm going to be using a raw umber shade pan pastel. Now this color I'm pretty much just going to put in the ear here. I might go a little bit around the eye with it, but I just want to kind of cover the fleshy parts here in this ear, just to tone it down just a little bit. The next color I'm going to be using is the raw umber extra dark. On this, I'm going to put this color on the deeper part of the ears. They're usually a little bit darker than the tips of the ear, so I'm going to just put a little bit of this in here, kind of at the outside of the wing flap here, just leaving a little bit of fleshy undertone in there. Now we kind of want to go over these eyes. We don't want to necessarily cover in our epoxy work down and behind, but the eyelid skin, we want to kind of have that layer of darkness on it. That should get our eyes pretty close to the shade that we want. I'm going to go ahead and take this along the lip line here also. That'll get us a pretty close coloration right now. I'm going to go ahead and do another seal layer on these. Now at this point, everything's pretty close to what we want. This nose, however, I'm going to touch this nose up a little bit. I want it to be a little more of a little brighter color. I'm probably going to put a little red on it, and then I'll put that flesh color back over it. That should give me the tone of the nose that we want. The red shade I'm using is the permanent red shade. I just want to be pretty light on this color because it's easy to overdo this color. Now that's always a little too red of a color, so I'm going to take that red iron oxide tint that we put on there at first. I'm just going to kind of lightly go over it, and it should give us a nice tone about where we want to see this nose at. It kind of gives us a nice undertone. I'm just going to go ahead and seal this off. The neck, I'm going to put the black pan pastel on there. I just want to put a little bit in the kind of the crease of the nose. Blend it upward here. We'll work it into where the lip line would be here. We're going to blend a little bit of the skin running into the nose with that. Okay, we're going to brush it in where the hair and the nose skin meets. We're just going to kind of give it a little bit of a layer here. And I usually put a little spot or two in the nose skin itself. I will take the raw umber extra dark on the pads just to go over them and seal them off. But other than that, we're pretty well done with this cat. What we have to do now is we just want to rub any of the excess paint we have on there. You can kind of feel the stiffness from spraying the clear coat over it, so we want to kind of work that out of the skin also. Now we're just going to take our toothpick and work the liquid latex off. You can just see how easy it peels, giving us a nice clean eye without having to try to scrape anything off. Okay, now that's pretty much how I finished my Bobcats. This Bobcat's pretty much done. I still didn't do the pads yet, but I'll do them. But it's pretty much ready for a picture and return back to the customer.